Welcome, Warriors, back with another episode of Vigor Warriors 2. Hope you guys are doing well on your purpose. And I want to do another video, this time on negative thinking and retention. And obviously, they're not going to be a positive relationship between both of them, but let's kind of focus on that a little bit. First of all, I wanted to thank, because this kind of goes along with the video we just did on when to get confidence, when you get confidence through retention in your journey. And I want to thank Oscar for that one. Shout out to him. And then I had a couple other questions this morning. Chimbu, and if I said this wrong, please forgive me. But the idea was talking about edging and marriage, and so we'll talk about that one on another one. And then also E-Trillionaire had a good question about getting closer to God through retention. And so we're also going to go ahead and focus on that one a little bit too in another video. I also have a third one talking about how we should not be fixing relationships, and I'm talking about the males now. We should not be fixing relationships, and that creates a lot of problems in a relationship. So we'll talk about all those in future videos. But let's focus on this negative thinking a little bit. And once again, subscribe, like, comment, and please donate if you feel in your heart you want to do that. To focusing on negative thinking. Now, we talked about this when we talked about confidence, but let's kind of break this down again to kind of look at this. So in order to gain confidence and to really get the most out of this, I'm finding that as time is going on, and I'm at 510 days, and I think it's 35 days in monk mode, I've had to go back and analyze why I struggled for all these years, and why I was focusing more on the relapsing and having issues and all those type of things. And so I broke it down in my situation to two different things. The times that I relapsed, was the idea was is that, well, there's actually three things, but two things was that I was bored, and I had heard, and then the second one is I had heard that you need to go ahead and relapse to kind of be healthy. And then the third one really was that I wanted to bring dopamine out of me to get excited because things were going bad. And I thought the only way to turn that around was to go ahead and release. And so I was under some very false pretenses. And once again, that's why I say we live in a matrix, because what we think we see is not what we really see. It's actually the opposite of what we see. But we're living in a world where people tell you got to release and you got to have as many partners as possible. And I believe all that is just leading us like the Roman Empire or Sodom and Gomorrah or Babylon, leading us to destruction. And that's going to happen very quickly before people even know it, just like it happened with Babylon and all of that. Roman Empire took some time, but you could see that coming. But the idea, guys, is that you want to avoid negative thinking. Now, once again, going back to what I was talking about, is that once you start figuring out why you're releasing, you can kind of address the problem more. And so, as I'm on monk mode for 35 days, I've now kind of lost a lot of that urges. Now, not that the drive is any further down. Your sexual drive is actually the highest I've been ever. I mean, I feel stronger than I've ever felt. But the thing is, you're able to control this now. And you're able to say, no, this is not something that I am going to go do. I'm not going to focus my time, waste my time and energy on this type of thing any longer. Because if you're feeling positive, which is a result of retention, that's one of the benefits, is feeling overall a general sense of well-being and health, because you have those nutrients still inside of you, right? Well, then there's going to be no need to release dopamine if you're depressed or angry, right? Since I've been on this thing for 500 days, I have not had a lot of fear, anxiety, depression, and things have gone good and bad, right? Like I said, we live in a certain state that is very restrictive of things you can do. So it's created a lot of stress in my life and my family's life. And so what you have to do is kind of say, okay, I could have released many times, but I stayed strong because, to me, I'm now understanding this, and I'm trying to pass this on to a lot of our viewers, especially younger viewers. But it goes back to that memory muscle again we talked about the last video, and the fact that your body and your mind focus on the bad habits you had. And so if you're upset, if you're negative about something, you're bringing that to the surface again. And so it's going to build and build and build to the point where the only time you're going to be able to feel any kind of relief is when you release. And that's what happened to me, right? Many, many times. And I didn't really realize it until I thought about that. And I really think God has brought that to the surface more. And back to Trillian's comment about retention and God, I think you're getting closer to the Lord, and we'll talk about that in a separate type of video. But the more you're doing this, the more the Lord provides insights to you about what's been happening. And one of the things that's been happening is the fact that, even edging and getting this, closer to the surface is really a problem, because it takes away. I believe you can lose a little bit of energy that way. And I do feel that really is something you should be avoiding too. And so monk mode, I think, is really the best approach. It doesn't necessarily mean that you still can't have relations with, in my case, your wife or something like that, but you're basically not trying to release. Now, we can talk about a whole thing about edging and all that kind of stuff in another video, but going back to the negative thinking, the idea that we're focusing on here is you do not want to create a situation in which you're looking just to relieve stress. And I think that's the key thing. When you're releasing stress, that's the best, danger you have there, to go ahead and look at pictures and release. And that's what I did for years, and then I feel miserable afterwards. And so the feeling you feel afterwards is terrible. And so for a little bit of release, you realize you've just kind of lost your energy for what? Now, if you have a certain level of retention, now you're able to handle that stress a lot better. And therefore, you won't have a need to start thinking negatively. But if you're a pessimistic person like I used to be, you used to always have that need to release, because the negativity would build up, the fear would build up, the anxiety, the depression would build up to the point where you felt like you had to release. And now that I'm on this journey, I don't have those negative thoughts. Actually, I have very peaceful thoughts. I may still have a lot of stress going on around me, but I have a lot of peaceful thoughts, and I'm not thinking about negative type of things. And so I don't need to release that dopamine that we did when we used to have that issue. So the thing about it, gang, is that negative thinking really adversely affects your retention. And for those who are releasing, think about that a little bit. You might be a victim, like I was, of too much negative thinking. And if you focus on positivity and achieving goals and doing the things you need to do, you're not going to even want to think about going ahead and releasing. You don't need that dopamine. And the same thing goes for boredom, right? The other reason that we talked about before was people are bored. They're not excited, and they feel like by releasing, by finding sexual partners, this makes life interesting. So once again, it is a fallacy, because once you do it, even with a partner, and that person is not your wife, or you're not trying to have children, things like that, which I think is that. Now, I think once again, I know the other question Trillian was talking about edging is whether or not that's something that is not. I'm sorry, Chambu asked about that. So I'm talking about releasing part of your streak, and I don't believe wet dreams are. And I certainly, I think once you're doing it for procreation purposes with your wife, that's not breaking your streak. I think you're doing it for the intention that God had you do it with. And I think there's certain times people can actually go ahead and still have, make love with their wives without going ahead and releasing, and that's another part of it too that you could talk about. So there's lots of ways that you can kind of work through that, but I think that's a partnership between you and your wife. And I believe that that's something you guys work on together. But that's a union that you guys bring together. And I think as time goes on, if you have that feeling of working as a partner with somebody, you're not going to go want to do that. But going back to this negative thinking, I kind of sidetrack a little bit, talk about each trillionaire's question, which was a good one. And I had to think about that a little bit myself. But the idea is that when you're talking about negative thinking, you don't want to allow that to get involved in your retention. So as we talk about this idea of control, the control has to come with a positive viewpoint. And as time goes on, you will gain more positive out of it, because you're retaining, You're feeling better, you're feeling more confident, and you know in your heart that this is what the warrior should be doing. You know that's the way the warrior should be. You should be a person who's in control of themselves. And if you're in control of yourselves, you gain a lot more positive feelings about things. You're not just, losing control, whether it's your anger. I find myself not getting angry as much anymore. I find myself more peace and calm. And I think as time goes on, I'll probably end up seeing more and more of that than less of that. And I think as you look at the type of thing, you're talking about really doing something that creates a lot of positive in your life. And as far as the opposite goes, once you start thinking very negative, now you're creating a lot of stress, anxiety, depression. And that's the easiest way to say, okay, how can I release this? It's almost like a bomb ready to explode. And so you figure, well, the best way I can release this then is to go ahead and release the energy. And that's the danger. And this is why people go back, in my opinion, and relapse. Because what's happening is that you're trying to find ways to release that dopamine. Whether you want to get excitement in your life, whether you just want to release the stress, anxiety you have, people do those things. And I've known people actually search out partners just to release stress and just to kind of forget about the problems. And the guys, the whole thing is that the irony of all this is that if you hold on to your energy and not release it, you'll be able to kind of overcome these problems by not allowing it to get to you as much. And so your stress level becomes a lot less. And what ends up happening is you become more powerful and strong. And now you can withstand all the wiles of the devil, of Satan, and all the stress and things created. Because that's all it is. I remember one time, and I can't remember what I saw this with, but the devil was talking, and the devil was basically saying that the number one card they have that in the deck that can defeat any person is not all the other illnesses and things that we talk about, but the number one is depression. If you're able to get a person to lose hope, Satan says, that is where I can then take care of all the other ones. But if you give up hope, that's when this happens. And so with retention, guys, the chances are you're going to a lot less fall into hopelessness and depression. But as time goes on, and I think I go back to the Trillionaire's comment a little bit on this too, is that you are going to get closer because you're going to become stronger. And I think this is the intended purpose God wants you to have. And so I know I combined some of these together a little bit more because it was two interesting questions. Jambu had a good question on edging, and each Trillionaire had a good question on God. So I'm going to kind of keep talking about those two issues separately. But I wanted to kind of finish up on this one, talking about this negative thinking. You got to realize that part of the problem here is why you're releasing. And if you figure out why you're releasing, which I had to do after time, I was now able to get more insight on this. And the bottom line was that three reasons. One is I felt the doctors were telling me, you need to do this for health, which was a misnomer to my mind now. Two, I felt like that I was bored, and so those times that I had to find, women or pictures of things to kind of make me more excited. And then three, basically to release stress and ideas. And so all of those are things you have to be careful of. But the bottom line still goes back to your attitude about life. If you really sincerely are doing this, monk mode or just regular no fapping and all that, you will feel more positive. And you got to keep that going, because that's going to lead then to a lot more benefits and a lot more strength and a lot more confidence, and then communication, and then success. All right, guys, I hope I answered this. Once again, Oscar, thanks for that question that kind of gave me some impetus here to kind of do a couple different videos. And now I'll kind of do another one coming up. We have X3 going to come up pretty soon here. One is not to try to fix problems, and then we'll focus on Jambu's on the question edging and marriage, and then we'll focus on Trillionaire's good question on God and retention. All right, guys, until next time, have a great day.